So it's been a while since my last video, but that's because I've been busy marking your projects. And I'm almost done, and you guys should be able to get your assignments back next week on Moodle. I'll post a PDF there with personalized feedback on your assignment. Also, I want to thank you guys on your feedback for how the course is going so far. I really appreciate that. In particular, I was really glad to hear that you guys are enjoying the course so much and that you're really enjoying the outdoor activities, because that's a new thing this year. Almost everybody wanted more of those. Now, I can't change the way the course works right now, but I do have an idea for a way to make Project 2 more interactive. More on that later. Now, some of you also mentioned that you thought the quizzes should be worth more, and a couple of you also asked if I could drop your lowest quiz mark. And I have an idea about this too. Here's what I'm going to do. Towards the end of the course, I'll post a link to a survey where you can rate various aspects of the course. Now, this won't be for grades. It'll be more like the USATs that we do in lecture courses on campus at Queen's. And if you complete the survey, I'll drop your lowest quiz grade. How about that? Okay, in other news, I took a trip to Brother Islands, which is out on Lake Ontario between Kingston and Amherst Island. And I was there with a team of students from the biology department to help with an annual count of double-crested cormorants. Now, double-crested cormorants are seabirds. They're really common throughout North America, and they breed on islands and in coastal areas. They're cool because the adults grow these funky eyebrows in the breeding season. Now, some of you might have seen these birds up close before, but a lot of you have probably seen them from far away if you've spent any length of time on the Great Lakes, because they gather in these huge flocks. I remember seeing them do that in Hamilton. But it wasn't always like this. So back in the 1940s and 50s, with the rising use of pesticides like DDT, cormorants were nearly wiped out in North America. Why? Well, the reason is because of their position in the food chain. And to understand that, you have to know something about the chemistry of DDT. Now, DDT molecules are lipophilic. That means they're attracted to fat. And so when DDT makes its way into organisms, it accumulates in our fatty tissue. This leads to biomagnification, which was covered in Chapter 9 of your textbook. Here's how it works. When DDT gets sprayed on agricultural fields, it eventually ends up in the water supply. And there it gets taken up by organisms at the bottom of the food chain, like zooplankton. Now, a little bit of DDT isn't really a problem for zooplankton. And of course, there are predators that eat zooplankton, like fish, and so now the DDT also gets stored inside the fish fatty parts. Now, one small fish can eat a lot of zooplankton over its lifetime, and the DDT from every single meal gets stored in that fish's fat. So over time, the fish develops a much higher level of DDT in its body than was present in the surrounding water. Cormorants are fish predators. They eat fish like alewife that eat zooplankton, and they eat a lot of them. One cormorant can eat about a pound of fish per day, and a bird can live up to 20 years. That's a lot of fish. And once again, the DDT from every single fish meal gets stored inside the cormorant's body. And so as top predators, they bear a major brunt of pollution. So, back in the 1940s and 50s, people discovered that DDT was a really effective pesticide. They were using the stuff everywhere. Nobody knew it was a bad thing. But then scientists started to realize that DDT was causing toxic effects. And in 1962, with the publication of Rachel Carson's book Silent Spring, the issue came to the attention of the public. This eventually led to a ban on the use of the pesticide. But by then, the cormorant populations in North America had already crashed. High burdens of DDT and other pesticides caused chicks to either fail to hatch, or they would hatch with crossed bills and other deformities. And there were almost no birds left breeding in the Great Lakes, and many cormorant populations were listed as threatened or endangered. But now, 40 years later, the water quality is vastly improved and the populations have recovered. We counted over 2,000 nests on the largest Brother Island, and each nest means a family of at least 4, maybe 5 birds. Now, as an aside, this is one of the dirtiest things I've ever done. See, cormorants nest in trees, and our job was to walk up to each tree, mark it with flagging tape around the base, and then count every cormorant nest up in the branches. I counted one tree with 102 nests. So guess what rains down from the sky when you have 102 bird nests above you? Yeah, and also, cormorants have a really nice habit of vomiting regurgitated fish at you. I got hit with one fish, and the smell still won't come out of the shirt I was wearing. Brian, smell this.
Oh.
The other interesting thing about these massive colonies is that the guano has a real ecological effect. There's so much of it because there's so many birds. It literally coats every surface. The plants are just covered in white. and that's not good for the plants. And it's also a huge influx of nitrogen into the soil and the surrounding water. Now, within a few years, the presence of a cormorant colony literally kills every plant and tree on these islands. So there are 3 brother islands, and you can see on the 3 different islands various stages of colonies over time. There's the biggest island where I was counting the birds that still has some trees and vegetation, and then the other 2 islands where the colonies have existed for more years, where all the trees are dead and all that's left is these spooky looking dead spires, and most of the birds on those other islands actually nest on the ground now. So you could say that this is a form of pollution as well, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. It depends on your point of view. What's more important, maintaining a few trees on these islands or maintaining the seabird population?
I don't know.
So the point is, whether or not we call something pollution depends on a judgment call. And also, just because something's natural doesn't mean it's not toxic. Now, as a side note, guano can also be a transport system for all kinds of toxic chemicals. For example, researchers have found DDT in Arctic waters, even though DDT has never been used up there. So how did it get there? Well, the reason is it came there with birds. There are migratory seabirds that feed down at lower latitudes, around here, and then travel up to the Arctic to breed. Researchers from the University of Ottawa have shown that Arctic lakes that have seabird colonies around them can have 100 times the pesticide levels of lakes without seabird colonies. So what this shows is that we're putting these chemicals into the environment down at lower latitudes, and then birds are spreading them to other parts of the globe. Other researchers have shown that the same thing is going on with penguins in the Antarctic. If you're interested, I've posted links to more information on this, as well as a few other videos that can give you a tour of some of the most polluted places on Earth. Now that's all for now. Don't forget that quiz number 7 is due this Sunday, June 30th. I hope you guys have a great Canada Day weekend.